Good morning, folks, and thanks for joining us. Someone just sent me a message on here to point out that this webinar is exactly the halfway point of the current webinar schedule. So I think that's 13 then. This must be number 13, lucky number 13 for Adam. I'm looking forward to today's session. It's got one of the highest rates of sign-ups of all of these, and I think I've been trying to figure it out, other than Adam being well known in the industry and people tuning in to see what he's going to say. I think it's such a broad concept and a broad topic that lots of people think there could be something in this for them. So I've seen the presentation and I've looked through it and stuff with Adam while we've been testing things, and there's an awful lot in it. It's one of those webinars where we're going to touch on lots and lots and lots and lots of things without going too deep into any of them, because as Adam and I were saying yesterday, each of the points that he'll bring up could probably be a webinar topic in their own. There's so much to this. So just the usual little bits of housekeeping before we get going. We actually have started looking beyond these webinars and figuring out what to do next, or whether we keep scheduling them. We've had an awful lot of interest from more people wanting to deliver some of these. So I'm going to pop a poll live real quick, and if you wouldn't mind giving us your opinion on what we should do next or how we should keep going. We're keen to kind of focus any efforts in the smartest way possible. So we'd like to do whatever is going to kind of appeal to you guys the most, and let that be where we put our effort. So you might give us a quick answer to that poll. As usual, I want to say a big thank you to Paul Griffin and the guys in Actavo Events for supporting the webinar series and helping us get this going. Like I said, we've 26 scheduled. We're halfway through. I have at least another 12 sessions that people have offered to deliver, and some of whom have presentations and everything ready for. So I have a feeling at the minimum, once this run is finished, even if the world does get back to normal a little bit, I think what we might stay doing is a webinar once every 4 or 6 weeks or something like that, just to keep things going. I saw that someone, I think it was Matt, popped into the chat there the link for the LinkedIn group that Sarah Jane, one of our attendees, has set up, which I think is a great resource for people if you're active on LinkedIn to stay sharing and stay helping one another and talking to one another, even beyond COVID. And as I'm known for saying regularly, any chance I've given, even if LinkedIn isn't your thing or you don't think it's your thing, there's a really, really active event community on there. So it may well be worth you reconsidering and just joining, even if it was just to be involved and to have a load of people you can access really quickly to bounce stuff off. I think there's great value in that, and it can be hard to do, especially maybe if you're starting out in your career. So it's well worth thinking about. That's interesting. A lot of love there for continuing webinars, and then an awful lot of love for do all of the above. Okay, I probably shouldn't have put in the all of the above option, because I was kind of hoping we might get to focus in a particular direction. One of the things we put in there, in case you noticed and are confused, is the free email courses. We're doing one of those at the minute that we launched a couple of days ago and has been really popular, and it's exactly what it says on the tin. It is a free email course, which means you get emails that teach you stuff. So it's a 5-day one, and I'm just going to really quickly pop an offer thing live there so you can get the link direct to that if you're interested. So this one is the first one we've done. It's called How Many People Fit. So it's just to let people have an insight into how people like myself or people like Adam or those of us who figure these things out, figure out what the capacity for a venue or an event is. So it costs you nothing. It's free to sign up to. You get an email 5 consecutive days and then one recap email, and that's it. It may be of value, it may not be of value, but if you're interested, you can hit the sign up button there. As usual, like we've been doing for the recent webinars, when it comes to Q&A at the end, we'll do most of the Q&A at the end. We'll jump in and out with Adam if stuff comes up and we really want to kind of focus on something that he's got on a slide. But generally speaking, the Q&A will be at the end. And we're going to use that functionality that allows people to turn their mics on and come on as a presenter as such here and ask the question and get interactive and stuff. There's usually a few people into it. Sometimes technology lets us down. It works on our end, but doesn't work on the other end. So bear with us if you are trying to come in and it's not quite working. Technology doesn't always work, but we've had some great sessions where we've had 3, 4, 5 people come on put questions to the presenter, and we get into a good conversation. So we'll do that when the time comes. We'll do it for the Q&A. In the meantime, I think that's all I really need to be saying. I'm going to hand over to Adam. I have to say, I've mentioned multiple times that an awful lot of the presenters on this series are people that we haven't met, that I haven't ever had a chance to work with, that I just maybe know through LinkedIn or networking online, and they help me, I help them, kind of thing. Adam is one of the exceptions to that, in that I have actually worked a gig with Adam. I can see him laughing down in the corner there. We've only worked the one together. It was a good one. It was full of all sorts of challenges. I think we worked well together. Adam would have more of a focus on the kind of the site, the traditional health and safety side, and I was more focused on the crowd, and we had other team members with us too, and I think we all worked quite well together. But I have to say, it was one of those ones, I probably didn't tell Adam this at the time, but it kind of threw me out of my comfort zone. It was one of the first kind of international festival events for a big promoter that I'd been thrown in fairly late in the day. We had to figure a lot of stuff out, but I have to say, I really enjoyed it, and having seen how Adam kind of approaches things the same way I do, and it's just get on with it, figure it out, let's come up with a solution. It was really good to work with him. So I was really happy when he was keen to do this session, because I know how he works, and I know that he knows what he's doing, which means I know there's great value in the next hour or hour and a half for you guys. So I think he's getting suitably embarrassed now. So I'm going to shut up. Adam, if you want to start your presentation and take over the screen there, and I will pop back in if we've anything burning we want to talk about. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the end. And if you need me, I'm listening in the meantime, so just give me a shout.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. That was, yes, slightly embarrassing to say the least. So are you just managing the CDM aspect? Are you just doing build and breakdown? Is somebody else coming in for the open period? Are you inspecting structures? Are you spotting the issues, but then they have a structural engineer coming in? Crew behavior and compliance again. Are you the person who's going to potentially be walking around, and I hate this process, with a yellow or red card? Do you have the empowerment to throw people off site or stop them working? Are you going to be the person who, when the fire brigade turns up to do their visit, if they do, or local authority does, are you the person who's going to be liaising with them, taking them around, or is that going to be somebody else? We can go through all these. It would be great on lots of events that we had an auditor and data collector, so we can then benchmark for following years or against similar events. And finally, at the very end, are you just there because they've been told they have to have you? I'm sure all of us have gone into situations where we aren't actually really welcome. We're not understood why we're there and what value we can add, but somebody's told them that they have to have a safety advisor, a competent person within their role. And it's not a nice place to be, as I'm sure lots of us will testify to. All right, you need to think about your event spaces. Each one of these comes with different challenges. It may well be from a council, which then puts in your parameters. It could be that you're on a space which is privately owned. The Olympic Park, classic example of that. And where they're going to sit, what they are going to put in place to control that you have to work within. Street spaces which aren't closed to the public makes your build far more complicated because you're trying to work around people. Leicester Square, classic example for a film premiere. A stadium, it isn't being used for what it's designed to be used for. However, you are still within a built environment which you can work with. You then come under new guidance which come in with that. And then you get into purpose-built venues where some issues you don't have to worry about. If you're in these, then generally traffic, security, there will be preferred suppliers, or there will be suppliers that you have to use. They know the venue. This can be a blessing. It can be really negative. I've worked in a stadium where it was very clearly told to me that they didn't want us here because this stadium was to be used for what it was designed for, and we shouldn't be having events. That was from somebody not in management, but that was their position. Operating spaces which have got their own set of rules and regulations, airfields, railway stations. You are then working under a set of safety protocols which you will be unfamiliar with, but because that's the protocols which you need in that environment. Petrochemical plants is another case in point there. And then listed buildings. They're lovely, but they do come with an awful lot of parameters which you may not be familiar with working with it. Now, that can be no haze. It certainly will be undoubtedly nothing fixed to the walls. And your cable runs, for example, would be very, very difficult. And you need to plan for all these things, preferably before you get on site. Okay, basic principles. The vast majority of you are very aware of these kind of things. We shouldn't be doing things which aren't risky. We want to do things which are challenging, interesting. The audience, whoever that might be, goes, wow, it's the fact, it is the wow factor. Our job is to do these things in a way which is as safe as is reasonably practicable and to make the event really good for the people who are coming to it. It can be a conference, exhibition, pop concert, stunt, whatever it might be. Okay, the graphic on the side, that's a very simple way of designing your risk for somebody who doesn't understand it. We're sitting here and it's just like, what is risk? How are you going to do it? Okay, so we assess the risk and then we look at it and we go, right, what can we do to mitigate these risks? It is as simple as that. Some things we need to change massively. Some things we're not going to be able to do at the time because time is not on our side. And that means that potentially then the no comes out. If you can come in early enough, we can make just about anything really happen. At the end of there, it says, facilitate innovation and ideas. That's what we got into this industry for, was to do interesting, fun things. If we're brought in early enough and we actually think about the site and think about what we want to do, nearly anything we do is possible, but it's about getting the resources in place to do it. Okay, times and types of risks. With every event that we go into, there are different types at different times. The classics are the build, the open, changeovers if we're doing greenfield sites, which is primarily what we're focusing on today, and the breakdown period. When build-up is going on, as I say, we are all working towards a common aim. It's to get this thing open, make it look great, and create that wow factor. When we get into breakdowns, then it tends to be every man for themselves, and then you have a different set of priorities, which normally is, let's get the hell out of here as quickly as we can because we've got ferry to catch, we've got a plane to catch, we just want to go home, right? What I look at it from this perception is that there are sections of risk which you are going to be working within. You can say the common ones, which we can work on a fairly generic management of, specific to that event, which speaks for itself. Specialist risks, whether they are perceived to be high risk activities or not, and then the one which is the one that we want to try and get and only really deal with on site, which is the unforeseens, the variables. Hopefully we've got to a stage where we've planned out, and planning is going to be the key. I'm going to say it again and again. We plan out variables, then we get less on site that we actually have to deal with, that have dealt with in pre-production. Okay, so common risks. It's a simple list. These are all ones which you should be considering before you get anywhere near site and anywhere and what you're going to do. They're fairly self-explanatory. The big ones on these ones, which I would say, vehicles. Segregation on site is a massive issue for any greenfield site as we build. The vehicles needing to get to places, get through potentially public areas. If you walk around any city centre building site now, they have little gates which they slide across the road to stop the punters walking down the pavement whilst they've got a vehicle coming in and out. We're not on that stage. I don't think we need to be on that stage. But the vehicle segregation is a massive issue on site. What we tend to find is that people put everybody in high vis and then go, well, it's okay, you've got high vis on, so therefore I've discharged my duty. High vis is not going to stop an accident potentially. However, having a decent one-way system, traffic management plan, and a suitable speed limit is possibly far more likely to stop somebody getting hit by a golf buggy than, for example, a bit of high vis on. At the bottom, vulnerable persons. I think we should always think about it. It is often overlooked. vulnerable people aren't just people who are physically disabled. They can be members of the public. They can be people coming back to work. They can be people with health conditions. They can be the young. They can be the elderly. They can be the infirm. Vulnerable people are not just people who are in a wheelchair or on a set of crutches. And finally, the one which is in here now, infection. It is going to be part of our day-to-day common risk now. Whether we like it or not, I'm not going to go into COVID in any great way today. Absolutely not. But infection control and infection thought processes now need to be put into our common risk area. Specific risks. You've got your event. Where are you going to hold it? Okay, geographical location. That's heat, tropic, outdoors, indoors, etc. And then what are you building on? If you're building on a golf course, you want to say, which is a links golf course, it's built on sand dunes. If you're going to put marquees on the sand dunes, you need to be very sure of your ground conditions, because sand does not anchor marquees well. Equally, you could be on heavy clay soil, or you could be on any other type of soil. So you need to think about what ground conditions you're under. Some greenfield sites drain really quickly. Some greenfield sites are horrendous. I'm sure there's many people here who will be able to go through that at great length. Whether heat, cold, Edinburgh's Hogmanay. I've done it when it snowed. I've done it when it's rained. And then if you're going into the desert, a lot of us are now working abroad more often. Then you have to start thinking about the heat and those conditions, making areas which are cool for people to be able to cool down in, enough water, shade, and also doing the PPE there, which is sun hats and suntan cream. All right. Think about your audience profile. If you're going to be sitting here, you could be saying, I've got children, I've got teenagers who are non-accompanied, I've got schools, I've got elderly, I've got just a general population. Certainly, how you're going to look at that set of people, the risks and how you're going to mitigate them are going to change. Okay, crowd management and crowd dynamics, both of which, but crowd management here, how are you going to do that? Is it just a turn up? Is it a limited numbers? All these things you must consider. Wildlife. Now that could be rats, central London. That could be, or in this case, on where we're working here, it could be poisonous snakes, etc. How much noise is going to be created? And then we're going to specialist risks. Now, some of these are dangerous. They are undoubtedly dangerous. Some of these have a perception that they are dangerous. Some of them, without proper management, are definitely dangerous. You may notice here that we've got lifting operations as specialist risk, which was also as a common risk. Sometimes the lifting operation that you're going to be taking could be very easy. You can quarantine the area. You've got very few passers-by. Sometimes you're going to be doing lifting operations in a very enclosed space. It could be a very complex lift, 4 cranes, 1 crane, etc. Wind conditions, all these things. So it can, as something which is a common risk because of what you're actually doing, can be elevated. All of these are things which we will be thinking about, taking expert knowledge on. For some of these, crowd dynamics, absolutely expert knowledge. I'm not a crowd dynamicist. However, if you're going to be working in a very busy festival with a big headliner, you've got to have somebody who's a specialist crowd dynamics person on that site. Okay, and potentially beforehand, I would certainly recommend this. You do some modelling. Again, this is all things which in planning we can do to mitigate a massive amount of issues, which I'm sure all of us turn up on site and see at times. Okay, so we're going to go into control measures now. Again, I'm banging away at it. Planning, planning, planning. 90% of the issues on site can be planned out before we get to site. And that means that then we get to deal with the things which are the dynamics, the more interesting, the very site specific. A proper build schedule. make sure you've got contingency in place so that if it does go wrong for whatever reason, whether you can't crane for 3 days because it's windy or etc., you've got to build contingency. Your site design is absolutely critical to how the build's going to work efficiently, how the people are going to move around it, how you're going to get deliveries to various areas. That is critical again. You need to plan out your bottlenecks where you're going to have vehicles moving through crowds. Again, these things are all able to be designed out to a greater or lesser extent. Ultimately, we work in places where there are trees where you really don't want them, and we're also looking at historical events which have been going for the last 25, 30 years, and you have got limitations, or even the site which you started on in 2012 has now massively changed because it's been built up around by housing estates and developments, which then means that your site design areas that you could use, which were gap sites, are no longer available. How they do change. Risk assessment, it's absolutely critical. If you haven't done your assessments, then there is no way of knowing what is out there. And a risk assessment is a great tool for sitting down and working out who's going to do what their roles and responsibilities is. You can create a timeline as when these risks or the assessment of these risks is going to be brought forward in the planning meetings, which can then make you move forward. People have ownership and they know what they're talking about. Get your competent contractors. Now, these might be people who are very qualified. However, they may well be people who know the site inside out and upside down. That kind of knowledge can be utterly invaluable at all points in time. Seek your professionals. Now, whether that's structural engineers for your structures, meteorologists who might be sitting there for the wind or the weather which comes in, etc., crowd dynamicists, police, local authorities, fire brigades, all these people, they generally will be very keen to be consulted. Make sure that within your program, as far as you can, that you're not going to get massive movements of people from space to space who want to get somewhere else as quickly as they possibly can. Now, that might be at the end of the support act, everybody runs to the bar and goes to the toilet, fairly often and standard in Stadia, but you've got that people movement and that design there. There are times when you can't do it. At the end of a big festival, headliner goes off. Now, some people will be running for their cars because they're day trippers for the festival, but then the rest of them are going to be going to the late night entertainment, wherever that might be. And so at that point in time, you are going to have a huge movement of people, which you can't not have because that's the nature of the beast and the event. But then you have to have a robust system in place for you to be able to plan for that. Right? When you come to site, make sure that everybody has been told or has been informed before they get to site what is expected of them. For this year, it's not the same as the year before or the year before that. So they know they have some expectation of the limits of how they can work. Then when they get to site, get the inductions done. Make sure people have actually understood the basics, of what's going to be there. And also make sure that we can cascade down to people if situations change, not in an ad hoc basis, but in a clear process basis. Okay, what kind of talent are you going to book? Are you going to book some people who are notoriously known for causing stage invasions, have very violent, we're going to have a shot crowds, or are you going to be having somebody who turns up to site and has got a huge teeny bopper following? Okay, and calculate your capacities. Now, these capacities should be calculated in the real world, not in the I need to sell 5,000 tickets to make this event go forward. How can we squeeze 5,000 people into this area? Unforeseen risks. So here, these are things which, although they're unforeseen, perimeter planning can be done for them. All right. one of the worst ones which I ever come across, I think, and most of us will concur with this, is the withholding of information. People hope that if they don't have to tell you, then when they get to site, we'll just have to make it happen because it's worked for them in the past. Drives me bananas, because then potentially you're going to have to say, we can't do this. If you come to me 2 months earlier, we could easily have done this, but you haven't. But they hope that you'll find a way. A difficult conversation won't be had. Unplanned changes, standard. It is unforeseen. That's when we have to get out our conversations and make sure that we can make things happen. Some of it's easy, some of it's harder, but that's the dynamic part on site, which is fine. That's what we want to be dealing with. Dramatic change in weather. I think this week we've seen it all over the country, big thunderstorms, floods, etc. It's getting that may well become not an unforeseen risk. Security threat levels, again, that's speaking to your advisors, your local authorities, and your police before the event, knowing if the security is changing. And you can then say, yes, although it's unforeseen that it's gone up, we did have a plan in place. Your talent changes. Suddenly through social media, they've become from a support act to the size of a headliner. And then suddenly you're going, well, we weren't planning on this many people wanting to see this artist. The client changes its mind. Again, this is something which it's going to happen, and then we can try and find something which is there. A dramatic cut in budget generally rarely happens, but it can have massive consequences for the safety of the event and how you then manage the risk on site. So when do we step in? One would hope in a perfect world that we can be there during the planning stage. It doesn't always happen. The people who are going to be on the ground or actually at the event are only brought in to actually be the on-site team. So we are not there. But if we are there, that's when we can ask questions, the open questions, which are, so how do you think you're going to manage to do this? What's your thoughts on this? Open questions which provoke a conversation, really important. When we get to site, operation briefings. Now, whether that's first thing in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the following day, they are absolutely invaluable. It also allows people to then, within themselves, a safety advisor can be the person who instigates this, but then people who are there, who are stakeholders, can then actually have a conversation with each other to solve the problems and to work cooperatively, which if that hadn't happened, wouldn't actually, then we'd be scratching our head going, but I need to be there. Oh, but so do I. Oh, well, and then you have a point of conflict that you don't need to have. When people are operating unsafely, potentially to the detriment of themselves, which could be fatal, or to other people. As you see on the right-hand side there, this is a ladder on top of a scaffold with 2 guys standing on it, or 1 guy standing on it. They did have harnesses on, but they had nowhere to stick them onto. Step in, that's an easy one. Others are harder. And when we can influence change for the future, you will find a lot of people come to site who are poorly briefed, who don't actually understand what they're actually supposed to be doing. I think we've had lots of conversations with people. Well, I'm just here. I've just been told to turn up today. I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to be doing. So we can sit and we can talk to people about the next time that they come to site and for this event, that their design might need to change. There's a set of guys who do merchandising banners, and were tying on their truss onto the side of marquees with a massive great big sign. I first came across them in 2017. Next year in 2018, when I came across them, they completely changed their design. It was quicker, it was safer, and it was structurally solid. And they thanked me because we managed to work a solution which then they could put back to their boss and say, this is a better way to do it. Okay, so we've got to a stage where something that we've got to site and we're going to be sitting there trying to talk to people. It's really important to build relationships on site. If you're doing a festival site, sit down and have breakfast with people. You'll find out so much more around the breakfast table in crew catering as to where people are. Know that we're not just the fun police. We're there to assist them. If they've got an issue, come and talk to us, and we will help them and facilitate them sorting it out. Now, that might be that two sets of people need to be in the same place at the same time, or etc. We just don't know. And find out how people are getting on site, because ultimately the pressure of being behind schedule for whatever reason, guys on site or girls on site may well be, it may not be their cock up that they've got to the stage, but they're under pressure massively. Choose your moment. If a bunch of people are holding a great big piece of kit in the air, standing unsafely on access equipment, which isn't access equipment, let them finish the procedure before you go in and talk to them. Okay? There's no point in stopping people when, if they turn around and lose concentration, they're going to potentially make the situation worse. Know who the influencer is. It might be a crew boss rather than a project manager. There are different people who on site are going to be the people who will assist you, who are open to what you're trying to do and understand it. Okay? Before you do that, stop. Take a step back. What do I want to achieve out of this situation? Where would I like to get to? And where in reality am I going to settle to get to? All right? Play that out and frame it in a way which is going to help the worker either get better kit, have more time, have more staff, etc., etc. And educate people about risks. A lot of people have a perception of risk which to them works, but however, for us who've seen the same situation come to a poor outcome, then you change their perception of what in actual fact they're sitting and talking about and how they can make their life better. When you get people on board and they see that in actual fact your advocation for planning and for thought makes their job quicker, more efficient, easier, bingo, we've now got a better safety environment on site and people are bought into it. And from that, look for the win-win. We want to assist them. It's not just a big bag of no time. And choose which battles to fight on site. You're not going to get everything which you want. Okay, what is the big stuff? What are the big changes that you can do there and there? Quite a few would be come through in a post-show report as to what can be moved forward for the next event that you're going to be doing, and get expert input. Lots of us will know that doesn't look right. Now, whether that's truss which is bending and has got a big smile on it, whether it's a marquee which is looking really shonky, whether it's wiring, I'm not a qualified electrician, nor am I a qualified engineer. However, I know when things don't look right. Get the guys on site who you've built relationships with, who will sit there and go, yeah, this is what they need to do. Might even be food safety. I'm not a food safety expert, but I know enough to know that that's not right. And that's when you either get one of their bosses, the local environmental health person who you've employed for that job, get expert input, and you then are the person who is facilitating the conversation. You are not the person who actually has the knowledge. Okay, common problems, the absolute classics which we come across all the time. The program. People coming into an event who come up with it as their brainchild, their great idea, and they promise the earth to people to get them to do the job. And suddenly you get to site and you find out that in actual fact it's just not based in any way the reality of what's there. And people who think that they can do more. Now that's not because they're that they're kidding themselves. They honestly believe it. Moving on to other sections here, stakeholders underbriefed. Okay, not reading documents thoroughly. I've sat in SAG meetings where I've had something raised and not wanting to put too fine a point on it, but it's page 46 or page 25 that it actually says this. Okay, and you don't want to make these people feel like fools, but at the same time, you're going into a meeting with people who are not prepared. Now, whether that's because they've got a huge amount on their plate of pressures from their workload from the rest of their job, but time and time again, people aren't aware of what in actual fact is going on. Understanding of the management responsibilities. If you have the manager who is the show director, do they actually understand that their name is above the door? That the fact that they've employed you as a safety advisor to advise them doesn't mean that they're not still responsible for overall potentially what might happen on that site. Okay. Lack of knowledge and competence. Lots of people turn up on site or have been doing the job for years, especially in some of the festivals which are out there, and they are, they know their stuff, but they aren't competent in the role that they have now been either promoted to or they're being asked to do. Poor management, but probably the biggest one is the unwillingness of to manage. Project managers for areas sit there and either want to be everybody's friend or don't want to work, and I don't want to call it conflict, but they don't want to have difficult conversations with people because they want to be liked. This is a real critical area which I think happens an awful lot. You will walk up to the person who is the manager for that area and you say, right, I've got these issues that we need to sort out, some of them easy, some of them harder, and they kind of look at you and go, ooh, what, I'm being asked to do these? Yeah, because that is your role. Now that can be on an exhibition site, on a greenfield site, anywhere under the sun. Lack of information being cascaded. How many times have we had people turn up going, sorry, but you need to be wearing safety boots on this site? Well, nobody told me. Well, I'm really sorry, but you can't come in the door. Or, well, we've told you your company that all this information has been given to you about how you're going to work today and what you need to do. Well, we weren't told. It happens continuously. Then the efficiency goes, then everything, the time, then knock-on effects are then all the way through. And then we get to a stage where there's time pressures, corners are cut, pressure rises, mistakes are made, and potentially accidents happen. All because the crew who were employed to do the job hadn't been briefed properly before they turned up to site. Okay. Who needs to read the emergency safety plan? The people in show control, the people of the SAG meeting. Who needs to know all the nitty-gritty of what's going to happen? Or who needs to know that when the siren goes off, you drop all your equipment, well, place it on the ground, don't pick up your personal belongings and leave the building to the muster point, which is here. A lot of people make a huge amount of paperwork, which is then not read. Some of that paperwork is absolutely critical to some of those people, and they should read it, and they should understand it, and they should have reviewed it, and they should have put input into it. However, there are risk assessments which I have read which are 25 pages long for a procedure which, quite frankly, didn't need more than 2 sides of A4. The people who are doing that have never read that, and they're never likely to read that. You need concise, relevant information going to the people who are actually doing the job, and even better than that, that they've actually had a shed load of input into that process, because let's not forget, these are the people who are doing the task. They are sitting there and going, well, if we did it like this, it'd be much better, but nobody's going to help us do it like that, or not going to give us a bit of kit that we need to do it like that, because somebody's written in the fluffy world of their office, well, this is what I need to do to mitigate the risk, without actually asking the people who do the job. And it's highly frustrating. Lack of evolution. I've always done it like this. Well, we have to do it like this because this has been said here. Drives me bananas when you've got the same guys turning up to the same event year after year, or even the organisers, and going, oh yeah, we meant to get that sorted out for this year, but we've not quite got round to it. I think we should all be looking to improve. not everything's going to be perfect, but just as long as we improve and people engage with each other, not just with site safety, then we will evolve. And that's all that we can ask. Nobody's saying that it's going to be perfect, but let's say that it's going to be better than it was last time. I've covered this off, our risk perception. This is an area where we as safety advisors or people who are out there see things the whole time which cause accidents, whether it be cable management, ground conditions, etc. This is what we see day in, day out. We see the things which do actually cause harm rather than the things that people think are rather scary, like that big crane over there. Well, that could drop. The chances of that happening is very low because we've got lift operation plans, etc., all in place. But the things which cause injuries to people, slipping on poorly installed trackway, etc., they don't perceive that to be risky, but it has the potential, and really rather often, to cause some injuries which are going to potentially put you out of work for a period of time. A broken wrist, a broken bone, a wrist, a leg, etc. And this one, which I've touched on, which is the cheapest way to discharge duty of care. PPE is very, very, very low down in the hierarchy of control. But people jump to PPE and go, well, there we go. Look, if we put people in safety boots and high vis and hard hats and glasses and then we discharge our duty of care. Oh, and by the way, the contractors who are working on the site are responsible for equipping their employees with these things. The high vis is classic. Now, how about proper traffic management? An enforced speed limit, a one-way system, marshals at pedestrian crossing crossover points, or high vis for everybody on site and just let it just be a free-for-all. There are so many things that we can do within planning and managing on site which are far safer than just going out and making people buy PPE and go, there we go, right, they're all covered in PPE, top to toe, and therefore that's it, the site's safe. Sorry, it's not there. And then politics, whether that be people who've got axe to grind, either local authorities, who people within the local authority have decided that the place that they're going to have the fight is going to be on my event site. It's got nothing to do with the event site, but this is the place that they can call points off each other. Politics within people on the sites, etc. Politics is always going to be there, and the great thing that we can try and do is keep as far away from it as is humanly possible. But we do get sucked into it. It'll be amazing, I'm sure lots of people say, that when somebody thinks that they can get some money, a budget, everything else, suddenly they're interested in safety and risk management, because, oh look, I've got to have this for my job, and they won't give it to me. And then as soon as they've got what they want, they disappear again. Frustrating, but it is part and parcel of the job. Okay, so the benefits of risk management, it is quite simple. It's productivity and efficiency. And we come back again to the whole thing that I've said before, planning. If we plan all of these things, then it is going to be a very productive and a very smooth build and a very smooth show and a very smooth breakdown. Yes, there are going to be things that we can't, that we get blindsided from, but those things should be those variables should be as small as possible. And by having a proper plan in place as to when contractors turn up, that they can work in an area by themselves, which means that they can do it in twice the speed, and they're not worrying about other people above them, it makes for a really quick and easy build. Costs which otherwise you go, oh, well, I'm going to have to pay for this now. Your unforeseen costs and your budget, your contingency budget, can be lowered potentially because you've actually put the plans in place and you've put the budget in place for that money earlier. This is the ideal world situation. You know, it's amazing how much money can be found, which couldn't be found in the budget in pre-production, which suddenly now becomes magically there because now they need to deal with things. You'll get a great finished article. You know, it'll look fantastic. It'll open on time. You know, you'll get great positive audience experience. The workers will be really happy to work on that. And please, nobody ever underestimate that workers sit and go, you know, chatting between themselves. Oh, you don't want to go and work on that site. It's an absolute bloody nightmare. Oh no, they don't take care of you, etc. And the event will be resilient. If you've managed your risks and planned properly, the chances of your event, even when you've got unforeseen weather, etc., 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 it will be resilient and it potentially can keep on going. Obviously, there are times, you know, we've all got experience of times when your resilience cannot deal with what is an exceptional circumstance. Last summer's storm, which came through for the weekend of Boomtown, etc., and Boardmasters, was a case in point. But if it hadn't been for that, it would have been absolutely a resilient event. And so we can do things in a way which means that we just keep on going where other things might fail. And finally, just for a bit of fun, this is what we live for. So this is one that I was approached to do last year, which was a kite surfer wanted to jump off the funnel of that lovely ship, which is a cruise ship, with his kite inflated and go on to the and land on the sea. You might say we're not going to do this. However, we could put in place a set of systems which are detailed there, which show that we could do it safely, and we could absolutely make it happen. Well, ultimately, the kite surfer's Competence, being one of the best in the world, he got a history of doing stunts like this as well, which we could see. Was what it came down to. He had ultimate decision. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do this. Nobody else was going to go, oh, but we've paid lots of money for you to do this, so you're going to do it anyway. Which was good that we didn't have commercial concerns within the situation. And we made it happen. So, Mark, are you still there? And Mr. Green is...
Apologies for that. It appears that people working on Nextdoor's internet who swore blind they wouldn't affect my internet somehow managed to knock me offline.
Fantastic.
I assume you kept the show going admirably?
Kind of, yes. But I just did an Emma Olahan. Cool. I just answered her question, but I will allow you to... you can now do your bit as to what you've done.
Super. Well, let me get back to saying thank you for the session. I think it was really good. I think we did what we said we would, which is touch on lots of things without getting too deep into anything. I'm going to just put this functionality live if people want to put their hand up and come on and actually ask us a question. I made so many notes while you were talking that it's kind of difficult to know where to go back. And start I think one of the key things we need to reinforce is that, as a general rule, PPE is not a solution to most things. It's a bit like COVID at the minute. Everyone seems to be jumping to lash a load of PPE around the place and we'll all be fine. On the hierarchy of controls, it's down the bottom for a reason. So you're right. If we're engaged early enough, there's so much more we can do and so much more of a positive impact we can have than people coming on site and just trying to throw PPE at things. One of the other things you said, which I'd say we're all quite familiar with as well, happening is this whole attitude of we've always done it that way, or this is how we always do it. And it can be, and I'm a pragmatist and so are you, so I'm quite realistic. When I'm faced with someone saying that to me, like, I get it. I get that they probably have always done it that way. So to them, it seems to make sense to continue doing it that way. And it comes back to your risk perception thing, because just because they've done it that way and never had a problem their perception of the risk is vastly diminished. They think there is no risk because it's never gone wrong, whereas that actually doesn't change the true risk.
Yeah, and life does evolve. So what they've done 5-10 years ago, what we did 5-10 years ago in the industry, we don't do now. And you have to accept that life is going to move on. Whether that's through legislation, I'm sure after Grenfell finally comes out and comes through, which is going to be whenever, that we will have more potential issues with fire control on the sites. But at the moment, we had this whole massive perception, oh my God, Grenfell's happened. Fire is going to be this massive thing now. Oh my goodness. And in actual fact, it's not the business as usual carried on, but but then people suddenly went, and the perception was we can have a massive, great big fire. That can be very positive because people start taking fire seriously, but then they start focusing on that rather than the nuts and bolts of what in actual fact is going to be the dangerous things on site.
Yeah, and I think in the interest of balance, to be fair, I should say that the whole we've always done it this way thing, there are times where that is valid. I'm reminded of my first year when I went over to work Glastonbury, and how you just reminded me with the fire thing, how pyro and the storage of gas and all that works and is accepted and is 100% the right way in Glastonbury versus how we would do it here, were vastly different. So I had to, instead of maybe, as you said as well along the way, pick your battles, instead of immediately reverting to what I knew to be the case in Ireland, I did what you said. I speak to the experts. I found the gas guy that we had and I went, look, is this normal? I checked with Tim. Like, I had to do all my checks first and discover, okay, the way you're storing the gas here is perfectly acceptable to literally everyone who matters. It's just not something I'd get away with at home. So while 99 times out of 100 we've always done it that way is never the answer. As you said, it's worth checking yourself sometimes and checking with experts. I'm not an expert on food. I wouldn't be an expert on lasers. I'm quite good on lasers, but I wouldn't call myself an expert. And then the year that year I did Glastonbury, I had so many laser shows to check that you would have seen the relief on my face when I realized that Tim was there, the other Tim Fothergill was there, and all he does is lasers.
Yeah, it's like James.
And I was
James
able to
is the other laser guy that you've done your training with now. Have people like them on the end of a phone, even if they're not on site. You should hopefully have them spending your time getting people's names and numbers, building contacts. I know that if I've got an issue with lasers, I can phone up James, give him a text message if he doesn't answer, and he'll probably phone me back within 45 minutes to give me the absolute lowdown on, oh my God, this is dangerous, or no, that's okay.
Yeah, and I think you're right. That comes down to, I guess, people's networks and relationships you build up on sites over the years, that there's people you could pick up the phone to and go, I'm going to send you a picture of something I'm looking at. You might tell me, should I be worried or is it fine? Because as you said, and I was reminded when you said this of a quote that Roger Barrett said to me years ago. But you were saying you're not an expert in like electrics, gas, or whatever, but when something doesn't look right. And Roger Barrett came over a couple of years ago to do a presentation for us to the industry here in Ireland. And one of the quotes that came out of it was, designers don't design things to look wrong. So if you have any experience at all, or events, or you're used to looking at a stage or a structure, and you're looking at it and it just feels off and looks wrong, for me, that is enough to act on. Pick up the phone, send a photo to Roger, send a photo to someone and go, look, does this look right? Because it just feels off to me. And I'm quite prepared then for the answer to go either way. Roger or our structural engineers could text back and go, no, man, that's fine. It's always done that way. I'm delighted with myself. As you said, it's one less battle to pick. But having those people, because you won't always work on a site where you've got these people on the site working alongside you. And I suppose that's the thing. That's why relationships and your phone book and such is what's important,
Yeah. So do we have questions? Have you been monitoring?
Yes, there's a few here. Let's go. What was Luke asking? Any tips on how do you effectively manage unsafe working practices from contractors. Example, red or yellow card systems. Now, I gather you're not necessarily a fan of the actual red and yellow card system. So what's your best advice then for monitoring and acting on stuff that you have to act on?
Okay, as I said in the presentation, it's about trying to find a win-win and trying to find a way forward which is going to get them involved and bought into it. Because just turning up with a red card and going, right, sling your hook. I worked in a shipyard 25 years ago, and my induction for the safety guy was, if you do this, you're going up the road. If you're doing this, you're going up the road. You're doing this, you're going up the road. Right? And he was walked around, and he was the most hated man on site. Being the hated man on site is not going to do you any good. If you have a procedure in place, I would absolutely clearly say that there is a set of procedures that you're going to put on site, so that they understand that there is an escalation procedure. One which I think works very well, if you do need to do this, is you will get a verbal conversation, which will be that let's work together. If you don't want to listen to that, then we'll have a verbal conversation, which may well be you're down tools for an hour. Letter then sent to your employer, or a letter sent to your client. I would always frame it in, I don't want to write these letters. I absolutely don't want to write these letters, because I don't want to have this conversation with you. And that kind of works. And it's about education, an awful lot of time, and educate them about risk perception. There are undoubtedly things which are, sorry, mate, but you are now being taken off site. There's one person here. I once had a guy on a very large site deciding that because his trials bike was in the back of his car, he was going to pull a wheelie at 50 miles an hour down the road without a helmet on. Sorry, mate, your career on this site is over. End of.
Yeah,
then I went, and then I went to, before I took that decision, but before I went and had that conversation with him, I phoned up the site operations manager for that event. Went, this is what I'm going to do. Are you happy? So I'd already stepped back. I'd gone, this is the outcome that I want to get out of this. I'm going to make sure that I'm empowered to make this decision, and it's not going to come back on me, and I'm not going to be undermined, and we're going to have this conversation. And I called his boss and I explained it to his boss, and he was asked to leave the site, and he was not allowed back on the site for the breakdown either. It is all about communication. Turning up with a yellow card and standing like a referee, that is you going into conflict when what you wish to do is have a negotiation and a conversation, not conflict. Conflict is negative and will not get you what you want to do.
Yeah, sorry, forgive me while I change my daughter's clothes. Look, you're 100% right. There have to be things that are an immediate, look, that's completely pulling the piss, you're gone, I can't have that happening anywhere. And as you said, 9 times out of 10, you're developing relations with people and you're trying to bring them along. And like, I've scribbled down so much stuff from your presentation because there's so many good takeaways from it that might be genius things for people new to the industry. But the one of the others you said was about when it comes to developing these relationships, it's sitting with different people at breakfast, getting to know people, the things you'll learn about, the people you'll meet, the help they'll be down the line. We've all been on shows where, that random person you gave a lift to when she looked stressed or was carrying too much stuff and you happened to be going past her in a buggy, or the nice people you sat beside at breakfast because it was so busy. They've all become useful, or you've become useful to them. And that's one of the things I really miss about festival sites and working on live on a show like that, are those random relationships and those interesting kind of conversations you have with people, but they can really pay off. And that's what, again, I've seen people reiterating it in the chat there to those new to the industry. The more people you know and that you meet and whose phone numbers you have and whose ears you can bend, the better you're going to be in any role in this industry.
Yeah, totally.
A couple of more questions that came in. Do organizers, I think I know the answer to this, do organizers leave enough time for the takedown or the derig, generally?
Some do, some don't. Some really do plan it, and some will be off to the next show. You know, and quite frankly, at this moment in time, I would say breakdowns are the least managed because the show's over, everybody's slapping themselves on the back, go, what a great event, fantastic, it's all done. It's all done. Happy days. Let's go and drink champagne in back of stage, which doesn't really foster good relations when you've got 200 crew swarming the stage to start taking it out and hanging around backstage as people drinking champagne. I tend to find that when you've got a tight tendency, and I'm using this as exhibitions,
where your out deadline is absolutely solid.
Absolutely solid, and it's a very tight deadline, then people will plan properly. But the vast majority of the time, the amount of planning is very, very poor. Well, it's just going to happen. No, it's not just going to happen. It has to come out in a way that it came in. And you have the absolute classic situation here, which is that things which we say are going to happen are not enforced. Classics is ice cream vans. You know, you cannot leave the main arena at the end of the night until we've got it empty, and we'll let you go. And then they sit there and go, but I've got ferret catch. You know, the Isle of Wight absolute classic. Yeah, like, no. Yeah, we're on the 1 o'clock ferry. We have to leave now.
My best story about ice cream vendors and breaking my heart was an Isle of Wight one where I had to deal with about 17 of them looking to leave.
Yeah, it's like, I'm really sorry.
You're right, yeah.
But the thing is that if we know that, instead of people going, yeah, that's fine, and thinking, well, they won't enforce it, right? You say, look, we really need to get off-site at this point in time. Can you facilitate that? If we have that conversation, the answer might well still be, we're really sorry, mate, you're just going to have to wait. But at least we've had that conversation.
Yeah. But you could factor you're dead right, because if you've had the conversation, then maybe it influences where you're citing them. And then maybe there's an opportunity for you to put that main arena one near an exit way that you know you can nip them out quite quick. Now you're the nicest man in the world without really having done a whole lot except having information. And that was one of your earlier points, and loads of people jumped on it in the chat. Some went, I've been caught out by people withholding information loads of times, and maybe I still don't even think of it as a proper risk, but it is. I mean, some of our biggest challenges have been people didn't tell us stuff, and like you said, they'll just turn up and go, well, we're here now and the client's booked us, so you're going to have to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah,
and I kind of like that challenge sometimes. I genuinely enjoy the challenge, but it doesn't need to happen that late in the day. We can have figured this out 2 months ago, how we're going to do aerial performance over moving traffic because they forgot to close the road. Like, these are things we can figure out if we have the time.
Yeah, absolute classic briefing, headline act. Right, are you going to go into the audience? No, I'm going to stay on the stage. Do you have any pyrotechnics? Are you going to let anything off? No, not at all. Right, are you going to invite any of the public up on the stage? No, we're just going to stay on stage. That's it. Interaction minimal.
Guessing
crowd surf, got a kid up on the stage. Let handheld pyrotechnics off into the audience at the end of the show. None of which was difficult. Yeah, but we've been told very clearly, no, we're not going to do any of this.
No, it's funny that what's nearly more frustrating. I'm actually wondering, is it more frustrating or is it less? But what's around about as frustrating is when you do get the opportunity to have these conversations, and still they do the thing they said they wouldn't, or they do the thing you've very much advised against. We had it on a big European festival where one of the headline acts wanted to go into the crowd. So we went, well, we can make this work. This is no problem. Like, we do this all the time. We can get you into the crowd. And then I just noticed for sound check, he'd been using a wired mic. He wasn't on wireless. So I went, as a matter of interest, are you using a wired mic during your set? And he goes, yeah, I always use wired. I don't trust wireless. I went, okay, now that changes things slightly. And by slightly, I mean completely. If you're telling me you're going to try and climb the barrier and go into the audience with a wired mic, and his response was, oh no, it's really long. We have a special cable, like it's the longest cable you've ever seen. I was like, okay, you're kind of missing my point though. You going deep into the crowd, however many bodies back, with a wired mic causes me all sorts of issues. And we had a good conversation. Do not get me wrong. He went into the crowd with the wired mic, but we had some plans in place and we had ways of bridging and we had things ready. Exactly. So these things can be done and you can make them happen if you're involved in the conversation and trusted that you're not the, as you said, the guy you had for the job years ago who was hated because of the way he approached it. Like, I'm much happier on site being jokingly referred to as, oh, here comes the safety guy. But knowing that, look, what's the story? We'll figure this out. Like, how do we make this work? I mean, I believe it was that show you and I were on together that we spent a good couple of hours. What do we end up doing? A pull test for a new stage structure. Yeah. Which was not really in the remit beforehand. No one had ever asked us to establish whether the stage structure was safe or not. And we spent time then finding tractors and doing pull tests. Like, for good people who work in safety, that's the person we want to be. We want to be the helpful person. We don't want to be the red card, yellow cards. But at the same time, we understand that our role, part of this responsibility lies with us, and we will be turned to, and we will have to make a call. Which brings me beautifully to a question from Craig, which I'm going to slightly paraphrase, and I'm also going to answer in advance by saying, there's no answer to this, Craig. It depends on the judge. So Craig is wondering, when it ultimately comes down to it in law, you know, whether it's the contractor, the MD of the contracting company, the promoter, you, me, like, who's actually going to be held liable? And that really depends on the judge and all the factors of the case. I've always used this as an example when I used to do security work, that if you went, everyone has a story of a shitty bouncer. Everyone's been refused entry to a nightclub, or everyone's been pushed by a doorman or whatever. So if you go to court as a doorman or as a bouncer or as security, you're not starting on a level playing pitch. You're minus 50 already. And I think we always need to kind of think that way, that if safety is in your title at all, a well-meaning judge who doesn't know much about events is probably looking at you first, and let barristers and solicitors then argue the point. But when you've got safety in your title, you need to take a lot of this responsibility and take it seriously without stressing and worrying. As I said on a panel webinar during the week, like, the scale of events that we run and we insure and all of this, if I was to be losing sleep over them, or if I was to think about the risks, I'd never sleep. Whereas if you plan, like you said, if you plan properly, put the right people in place, have good contractors, then you get to sleep during these things and try and enjoy them and just get the work done.
Yeah, and what I would join in on that is, you know, yes, there is no easy answer to that, but if you have contemporaneous notes,
yeah,
so you actually have written down decisions you made, whether that be show control decision log or your own log, as and when things happened. If you are going to turn off into that situation, there are mock court trials which you can actually sit and join. I think ACT are probably the main providers of them.
They do a good one.
They're very interesting, and but make sure that you've got your notebook, your timeline, which says this is my decisions that I was made at this point in time. You may not get it right, but if you've got evidence which can back up why you made those decisions with the information which was there, and you can justify those decisions, then that will be a positive point if you are giving evidence at some point in time, whether you are the person who's in the dock or being asked to be there as a witness for something else.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's one of the items I have in a kit bag that regularly gets queried by other people, is that I always carry a little dictaphone. Of course, everyone goes, sure, you can record it on your phone. Your phone does that. Why do you need another thing? My phone is far too important for loads of other reasons when I'm on site. This dictaphone is so light, I regularly leave it behind me. So it's the handiest thing. So if you're faced with something, even if I'm just talking through my decision-making process, it's time-stamped, it's verifiable, it shows what I thought about, and it can be, as you say, I have files on the computer going back I don't know how long of notes from that dictaphone in case something comes up. Because here's the thing I always say on these webinars, and to everyone else, is you and I and 7 other safety people in the room at the minute could be given the same challenge, the same situation, and we'll come up with different ways to deal with it. That doesn't mean any of us are right or wrong. As long as there's logic and justification to the decision-making process, and we've chronicled it, and we've written it down, or we've recorded it somehow, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's people do it differently based on experience. As long as the safety person's experienced, they know what they're doing, they're qualified, you just have to trust. At the end of the day, it's only so much of a science, and then it's an art. It comes down to the person. It comes down to what you've seen happen before. If I've seen a stage go on fire before, I'm probably going to be really hard on fire stuff. If I've seen someone fall from the leading edge during a build on a main stage, I'm probably going to be the guy who's banging on about leading edge protection. So it's all based on our own experience, and that's important. You don't want to shy away from that.
Yeah, I would say that we all will make mistakes. It's how we learn from them, which is the big thing here. You know, there's things that I've done. I've steamed in when I really shouldn't have, and I've poured more than I would cost petrol. You know, flipping high grade fuel onto a situation in the past. You know, if somebody pushes your button, and you just go right, you've got it. I'm not proud of it, but you've got to learn. You've got to learn, and sometimes you will screw it up. You know, and you know, you hope that you learn from it and you don't do it again.
Yeah, it's one of the great things I think about having a team on a gig. So if there's 2 or 3 of you, because I'll know after my first interaction with someone, whether it's their fault or mine, but I'll know if I've kind of gotten their back up, and maybe I won't get far with them. And it could be then I'm coming back to our office to you going, do me a favor, Adam, will you? Will you talk to that guy in Trader Village because he hates me already?
Yeah. Or equally the same thing. You can say, you know, I've done it on exhibitions where we swapped halls. And you've been banging. You've now become the familiar face. And then you take your colleague and you introduce them, and they say the same thing, exactly the same thing. But because it's not you, and it's the same message from a different face, which they then imbue with more authority, or just they're going to hear them because you've been, oh God, here he comes again. He's going to ask me the same bloody question. You know, these things, so, you know, there are lots of ways to skin the proverbial cat.
No, 100%. And like I said, that's one of the reasons I love when there's a team of people on a gig. I've also had a situation where, speaking of leading edge, where on a massive show with multiple stages, there was one stage where the production guy just didn't really care about leading edge protection. And this was a very high stage. So I was with someone else. We arrived at the buggy at the back of stage, and a bit like you're talking about steaming in there, I was kind of fit to go straight in and go, look, it's frankly ridiculous that you have nothing up there. Let's take 10 minutes, get it up. I'll help you put it in and we'll be fine. But we were sitting in the buggy, and the other more experienced gentleman beside me just said, just hold on here for a second now. I watched what was happening, watched how they were using. This was back of stage. And he goes, here's what we're going to do. He says, I know this guy. I've dealt with the production manager before. Ideally, we would like leading edge on front of stage and here, back here in the loading bay. Have you seen what's going on? He says, it's crazy busy here. I'll tell you what's going to happen. He won't entertain putting edge protection on the loading bay because it's so busy, and that would be so annoying. He'll tell you about these other management things he has in place, which we can see. So he goes, we'd love a barrier. He won't love a barrier. It won't happen. That's what we're going to use to get the front of stage barrier sorted. And I went, right, you take the lead on it. Let's do it. And in we went. And 100% that's the way the conversation went. He went in going, right, I need you to put barriers up on the back of stage and at the front. And the whole focus was on the back of stage, and coming to the agreement on that and agreeing, all right, okay, yeah, it would slow you down a lot if we made you put full barrier in. But can we get the front of stage sorted at least? Let me go back with a win. And he goes, 100% straight away on the radio, got everyone down and got that barrier up. And had I gone in the way I was planning to go in, I doubt I'd have gotten the same result. And I'd still have preferred edge protection back at stage too, but I could see what he had done to mitigate it as a risk. And I could see that they were really, really busy back there, but they had people monitoring it, telling people to stay back from edge, guiding trucks in and stuff. So I was like, okay, there's a management protocol in this. That's probably the best we're going to get. And that comes back to picking battles, you know?
And also, what's the outcome that I want?
Yeah.
You know, what am I actually, you know, what is the outcome that I want to get before I go into this? You know, and that is critical. Where am I going to make a compromise? You know, absolutely critical before you go into the situation.
No, and it's interesting you talk about maybe on the exhibition side switching halls and stuff. I remember that year when I did Glastonbury and I was up in the rabbit hole and I had all that area. I see you laughing. And up in the park, like I got the park and I thought initially it looked like a lovely spot and my kind of people and I'd have fun. And then Nikki, who was kind of introducing me to people and everyone went, they have to trust you. Like we're going to have to, like, you're going to have to be very cute about how you work with them to make things safer. She had done it for years. And she was so right. Dealing with all the guys up there and the characters that they were and trying to bring them around halfway to where I wanted them to be was full-time work, but it was really enjoyable. And you get like, people are there to make fun experiences for other people. That's what these people are doing.
Yeah.
And I have to try and hit that balance between, I need it to be a little bit safer, guys. Can we do this? Can we do that? And they'll say, oh, that's going to ruin the experience. And I go, okay, talk me through the experience. And then go, okay, here's how I get what I want. Everyone's safer and you still, you know, they don't see the safety harness or whatever. And you can spend a lot of time doing that. But somewhere like the park and the rabbit hole and stuff in Glastonbury it is a real experience thing. And you don't really want to mess with it because it's pure and you want it to be as safe as it can be and as safe as reasonably practicable. But you don't want to suddenly start flinging ratchet straps everywhere and tying all sorts of things down more than they need to be because it'll look off, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And that's the risk. Sorry, I'm trying to go back to questions I wrote before I got kicked out of the room. If anyone wants to put the hand up and join us, feel free. Because I lost my internet and had to come back, I'm definitely know I've lost some questions. Let me scan down here.
I did have
how hard... Billy is wondering, how hard is the fight for budget in respect of safety and risk, and does it differ dependent on the size of the event?
Well, the budget for a bigger event should be more. It goes without saying, you know, the battle. I think what you need to do is you need to choose to work for people, and you will learn who take safety seriously. Because if there's no budget there, then you're going to be being a pain in the ass in a corner and they're not going to want to listen to you. And then you get into this whole conflict situation. You learn over time which are the good people to work for. Yes, you'd always like more budget. You'd probably like more people on site. Your first year is the year that you will learn. And you'll put forward what you need to do for the following year. If you then come back the following year, and nothing that you've put into place or conversations you've had has changed, then you're into a position where you're going to go, well, maybe we're going to walk away from this potentially. From the panel, which was there, very aware of being the parachute. Going into an event, going into a situation where you're being parachuted in to be the safety advisor without any pre-knowledge. You really, you know, then moving on from that is that if you get a client understanding what savings can be made by prioritizing risk management and safety, so that then next part, oh, look, we didn't spend this great big pile of contingency money because we prioritized safety and we got a more efficient build breakdown and the contingency wasn't spent, then suddenly people start taking it seriously.
Yeah.
You know, so there's, again, you know, there's so many different variables involved. Generally, one of the things which does happen very early on in budget cuts when they haven't sold enough tickets or the economic climate's very difficult is that they will look at things like safety as being one of the ones which they're going to take a chunk out of. Which is very frustrating. And again, that means that you're then put in a position where I don't feel that this event is safe with the cover or the resources that you're putting into it. It's a very difficult one. I generally am not the person who has to fight for the safety budget. I leave that to my clients to fight for the safety budget, and then I come on site and go, well, I'm here, and this is how much I cost. Thank you very much, and here's my invoice. Cheers, hurrah! But yes, it like everything else will be an ongoing issue with budget. Interestingly, with the COVID thing, people are talking the operations and operating budgets, which safety kind of falls into, especially within the events, within the exhibition area. The budgets will be more, and we will be listened to more in a situation, in this situation, because without us, with the perception of COVID at this moment in time, they ain't got an event full stop. Now, whether that's from operations team rather than the sales marketing and the event director, that without us, it ain't happening.
They don't have,
and suddenly they are absolutely, think, oh my God, you guys know what you're talking about, and now we really need you. Whereas before that, they kind of thought, oh well, operations just get on and do it, don't they?
Yeah, I think you're right. It comes back to the relationships thing again. Over time, you learn what clients or what partners kind of value it. And I think what you're trying to do as the safety person is have them understand that you are only going to cost them what you need to cost them. We can all, with infinite budgets, we can all fling all sorts of bells and whistles at a gig, but it'll be overkill. So what I want from our clients is understanding that I'm only suggesting you do it because I really think you need to do it. It's not because I've seen a shiny new toy and I think you should deploy it. So if you can get that relationship with the money people or the budget people or the ops managers, where they know if you're saying it should happen, it kind of needs to happen. You're not the guy who just tries to cost the money all the time. I think that's important as well. You want to be realistic. I had a conversation with a client yesterday where I reiterated the way we've always worked with them is we'll go as far as is reasonably practicable in our experience and then a little bit further. We'll always go a little bit further because for the client, we want it to be better than expected, but we're not going way further. And we've had clients come up with stuff and said, will we do this? And I go, look, you can, but your money and your time and effort is better spent over here. And that's what you employ me to advise you on. So I'd say pump that money this way rather than get that fancy new machine that won't actually do anything for you. So again, amazingly, it's back to relationships again. Yeah,
and it's perception of risk.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And somebody sitting there going, oh, this is really dangerous, so I'm going to put loads and loads of resources into this. And you're actually going, well, hold on a minute. That over there, big risk.
Yeah, you might want to spend a little bit of that money over here. See the big hole in the ground.
Exactly. And there's also the whole thing, which is, do you want to be the best in the business? Do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be one of the benchmarkers, which some people are absolutely, and rightly so, want as part of their systems to be. We want to be the trailblazers of showing where we're at. Other people are not as interested in that position.
And that's not a terrible thing. I think again, a conversation I've had recently enough where we have a couple of clients who are exactly that. They're the ones who want to kind of do and develop. What? Okay. I'm being told the iPad needs charging. The joys of the 3-year-old. Actually, I've just spotted a comment from Paula in the chat who said, let the little girl say hello. There she is behind me. I was about to say, Adam will attest. We tried to get her to say hello yesterday and she wouldn't. But there she is. Hi, Charlie. Say hello. Hi. Good girl. I'm nearly finished, I promise. We have a couple of clients who are like that and want to set the bar. But not every client is going to be like that. But for you and for me, I have to be able to work with them and feel we've hit at least what's reasonably practicable. We're focusing where we need to focus. We're not spending 2/3 of the budget on HVM, even though there's never been a vehicle attack in Ireland, just because they're now happening around the world. Like, these are conversations and they can be tough, but you have to have them with clients. So I'm scanning to see, has anyone thrown any last minute kind of questions in here? I don't think so.
Yeah, so the COVID one, which is...
Oh, the COVID one, yeah. There was a COVID one. Where's that gone? How is going to change? I wrote that down. Yeah, the reporting of it was a question about how will COVID and reporting of diseases change. I think it was specifically kind of build and break and stuff like that. And I mean, one of the first things we did during COVID was develop SOPs and a risk assessment for a government client here who was still going to have to be building things during COVID. So it was temporary build. So it was pretty much event stuff where you're going, how do you build stuff and try and do social distancing, keep surfaces clean and all that. So like the bottom line, yes, is it adds time and it adds effort and it adds thinking and it probably adds some budget. But I mean, the stuff is all achievable. What's probably not achievable is something that takes a 3-man lift before COVID can't suddenly become a 1-man lift. And if it was a 3-man lift and they're all within 2 meters of each other, guess what? They still need to be within 2 meters of each other. So now instead of just going social distancing, you have to be 2 meters apart, you're actually going, right, they work in 3-man teams, they stay in that team, they work in shifts, you know, they're only exposed to the same 2 people. You're into all of this kind of management of it because you can't just turn something. And you and I, Adam, talked about this before the session, and we said we'd mention it, is COVID is a risk. It's not the only risk, and it's not the only thing we should focus on. And that's the prime example for me is things that were 3-man operations before COVID are still 3-man operations to be done safely. And that's just a fact of life. So you have to get into other management processes to try and minimize the COVID risk, you know?
Yeah, totally. And, you know, it's going to add time. It's going to add time to build. It's going to add time to break things. Depending on the type of the event and the close proximity to people, you know, we are going to be sitting in a situation which says we're going to add time. Or potentially you can go for the riskier option, which is, right, we're going to put all of you guys in a bubble. Okay, so your lighting crew is all going to be in a bubble. So that's one company, one big company, 30 guys, you're in one bubble. You know, you're going to eat separately from everybody else. You're going to go to the toilet separately from everybody else, yada, yada, yada. And then if one of you gets unwell, then all of you are quarantining.
Yeah.
Which then potentially puts your business out of business.
Yeah.
Because you've just lost 20, 10, 15, 30 members of staff and you can't fulfill your contract. And it's a very complicated situation, which is going to be, how do you do this? You know, how do you do this? And for me as a safety advisor who freelances, what happens if I go to a job and I'm with 4 other guys or girls on site, and then I get a call a day after going, one of us got COVID. And I've now got another 2 clients for the next 2 weeks who I'm going to have to phone up and go, really sorry, I'm out the gate.
Yeah.
And, you know, and part of that potentially is going to be, there's going to be massive cooperation between safety advisors going, well, you know, you're going to have
cover
it now. Yeah, because and clients are going to have to understand that, because there is no way that we can function, and this is your business interruption and resilience, that we can function and say that we're just going to carry on, because we've got to think about
not if you know
things. Yeah, we've got to think about these things. This is not going away. So it is about cooperative resilience between organizing teams, safety, whatever it might be. You know, throughout the whole industry, they're going to have to cooperate in a way that they've never done so before.
Well, no, and look, it's one of the things we all keep saying is, one of the things that seems to have come out of COVID is that whether it's more so than we ever did before, maybe we're just seeing it more now, but like there is that kind of cooperation. People are getting involved with one another. They are talking. We're doing webinars. We're doing LinkedIn groups, all of that. There does seem to be a bit more of it going on now. So hopefully that might be one of the good things that comes of this. Maybe we all forge new relationships. Maybe someone thinks that Adam guy was great for 2 hours. I reckon I could work with him. I wonder if there's an opportunity. Do you know what I mean? You don't know. Interestingly, what you brought up there is a conversation I've had with 2 suppliers recently about the danger in being so desperate to get back to work and getting back on a job, and that they might see dollar signs when a big job comes in, but that they really need to plan their staffing. And exactly that was the case I gave them. If you have a team where one of them gets confirmed for COVID and now your whole team is out, where's your second team? Where's your third team? They need to think in those terms. So you might be saying to a client, what used to be a 2-day build is now 5 days because I'm putting a smaller team on it. So I have a backup team, and that's just the world we now live in with COVID.
Yeah, it could be a stage builder, it could be an arena seat builder, it could be,
You're right, though. We have to think that way. We have to consider it. Andrew is asking in the chat, is that document available? He sent that to me privately. Andrew, I'm not sure what document you talk about. You might pop it in there. We must have mentioned something that we don't quite remember mentioning. So pop me a message and let me know. What about good point from Ray there, that build times will be extended to create the bubbles maybe. But again, what about the D-rig? I think people are taking COVID quite seriously. If there's scope to it, people will accept that build and break needs to expand slightly. I think the problem will come maybe is as we start to drift from COVID into season again, where you're starting to get busy and we're getting back to that short turnaround between gigs. I think if someone gets hit then with a case of COVID that takes a full team out, it could have a massive impact. So I think people still need to be careful with the gigs they take on, even when it feels like we're coming out of all of this, because it'll still be around to some degree. And because of the wait for a vaccine and because we know how the infection works, Adam's right. If you're with a team, if there's a team of 5 and one of you gets it, realistically, it knocks the 5 of you out for the couple of weeks to see do you have it. So, it's not going to be easy for any of us. And like ourselves, where we have staff, like suppliers with big teams of staff, it's a lot to consider. But the only thing I guess is we're all having to consider it. We're all in it together. If someone figures out an answer, they can share the answer. If someone has a system, we can share the system. Like we're all trying to figure it out together. I think that the lads haven't jumped back in with whatever that document was. Who was it? Andrew, if you can hear me, email me, whatever. Let me know what document you're talking about. Obviously, we mentioned something that I don't quite remember. If it's a document I can get hold of, I'll definitely send it on. Adam, thank you very much. I have a funny feeling what we discussed might happen, has happened and may still happen. I have a feeling that if we do drift out of COVID and we're doing these webinars maybe like once every 4 or 6 weeks, then I think we might try and have you back and cover maybe 4 or 5 things in a bit more depth and let people get their teeth sunk into stuff, because this is such a broad topic that we've done what we can, which is kind of run through loads of things that people should think of. But if there was 4 or 5 things that we really want to get our teeth sunk into, I think that'd take an hour itself. So we might try and do that down the track at some stage.
None of us are here trying to stop things happening. I really like it when people come with like, I'm really wanting to try and do this. It's great. That's why we are in. That's why we are in this industry. All of us, 100%. because we couldn't sit behind a desk in an office. We are here because we want to do things. We want to make things happen. Now, whether that's as a member of an ops team or whatever else, we get our good vibes and our happiness from doing this job.
100%.
And we are very, very lucky that we get to do something that we enjoy as our job. Let's not forget about that. But this is what pushes our buttons, and doing this kind of stuff is exactly the way forward.
Yeah, and I can still see people's faces when they hear me say for the first time. And I think maybe it's because, as well as doing the safety, which we specialize in, but as a company, we also run events as well and plan them, is that if I'm on a gig and I don't have those moments where I'm looking out on a crowd, and it could be 200 people or it could be 100,000 people, I have to get that moment of, this is amazing. All the work that everyone's done, those traders who broke my heart, that man with the stage who wouldn't put it up safely, everyone have come together to make these moments happen. And we all still get a kick out of that. And I think that's what we're all waiting to come back. And if I had my magic wand, I would just make everyone understand maybe a bit better that the safety side, the risk side, we come from the same place. We want the most amazing events to happen. If you want to do aerial over moving traffic, I'll figure it out for you. If you want to kite surf off the back of a boat that high in the air, we'll figure it out for you. That's the type of thing we want to be involved in. And we have the skills, people like you and me and Andrew and all the guys in the chat and the girls that are here who work in this. We have the skills to figure these things out. I don't think we've ever not been able to figure one out. And that's the fun of it. Again, with enough time, with enough planning, we can make the most amazing things happen. And personally, that's what I'm looking forward to, getting back to just standing on a side stage, looking at a crowd for the start of a headline act and going, this is what it's all about. Thank you very much.
Yeah, our job sucks.
Yeah, doesn't it suck? Sorry, Andrew was just saying the document was the COVID planning. Andrew, I can't share that one because it was for a client. I am toying with putting together something slightly more general that I might be able to share with people, but that was a client document, and it was a state client too, so I definitely can't share that one. The government will be after me. So yeah, lots of people agreeing with our feelings on enjoying being part of putting shows together, whether they're big or small, and getting back. Actually, someone had asked me about the dictaphone. Did I put that link in? I think I did put that linked in, but
you put one up there.
Okay, cool. I think we're
just
good.
a quick one from Jennifer there. Jennifer, electrical safety and generators. James Eade. Just go Google James Eade. That is the man who does all electrical safety.
Get James on your electrical stuff.
Get James on your electrical stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I've never seen more at Plaza, a busier theatre, when James decided that his topic was grounding generators, yes or no. He had at least 100 people talking about the grounding of generators.
Oh my God.
The man, it was the most popular seminar at the whole of Plaza. The man is bloody brilliant.
Yeah, I think Jennifer makes a good point in that some people have asked for I thought what we were doing was quite niche-y for most of these sessions. Some people are wondering about very precise niche-y stuff. I think some of them could be like 40 people in a room. It doesn't really matter. If we can find the time, we're going to try and do some of those ones. Electrics, Adam's point stands whether it's James or not. Electrics, I'm comfortable, I know enough to know that it looks wrong. But after that, I'm not wiring anything. I'm not changing anything. Oh, Jennifer, you need to stop talking. She's just come back with inflatables as well.
No.
Do not get me started on inflatables. Okay, Jennifer, I may grow to hate you very quickly. Okay, let's stop because we're going to keep going if we don't stop.
Yep.
Adam, thank you very much. I think this was really good. People seem to have enjoyed it, which I knew they would. So thank you for that. Apologies for the guys next door kicking me out for a while, but thank you for keeping the show on the road. Anyone else? When are we back? We're back on Tuesday. I'm not going to lie, I've forgotten what session is on Tuesday, but if you're coming to it, we'll see you there. If not, we'll catch you somewhere along the way. You know where I am. People have my email if you need anything. And Adam, thank you very much. Adam, go walk the dogs.
I'm going to go walk the dog.
Go walk the dogs.
Exactly. All right. Well, have a good one. Take care, everybody. And thank you for listening. Cheers.
Not a bother. I'll talk to you soon. And thanks all you guys for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
No problem. Okay. Take care. Ta-ra.